Good morning, everyone. Ooh. Okay. Thank you, Sarai, and thank you everyone for joining me again. And today we're going to start breaking down the step by step of creating a class plan. So right now, we are having a session regarding how to open your class. So the opening is a very short bit in our class, and that is challenging because we are supposed to make it compelling, make it engaging, but not let it take too much time. This is also a good moment to strengthen our socio emotional abilities in the classroom. So it's a moment where we can allow our students to relax a little bit, to connect a little bit before we dive in to the class proper. So I am famously bad at making this short because I really get engaged with what my students have to say. So I sometimes let this bit go longer, and that can be okay if you have a very small classroom, but the larger it is, the harder it gets to create a larger space for this. So there are some possible, oh, yeah, there are some activities that you can do that can make this kind of short and also make it connect with the class, which will really save you some time. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay, so here we go. So the first thing we have to do is think about how we are setting the scene, right? So we're setting the scene for our learning and teaching experience. And what we want to do when we do this is we want to adapt it to very specific conditions that we have. So we need to ask ourselves, what about our learning environment can we use to our advantage? And what things might make it difficult? So, how might we strategize for possible challenges? And those challenges can go anywhere from failing technology to, say, very difficult students who keep challenging you personally and don't let the class move on. So, at this point, I added these very weird images at the bottom because I was reminded of an experience I had when I was teaching chemistry. So I was teaching high school chemistry for no, was it high school? Yes, it was high school chemistry. And I had a couple of students who kept interrupting, just trying to be funny or trying to, distract everyone. But these guys were super talented at illustration. They were artists, and they were fantastic artists. So I came to these cards, which are comic book style representations of every single element in the periodic element table of elements. And I figured I could make it into a kind of fun, engaging activity for them. And instead of trying to get them to stop interrupting, I gave them a challenge. And I said, like, okay, so we have the chemical elements and we have some of their features. How would you recreate this drawing? How would it look like to you? And they made some beautiful art. I still have one of them with me. They made this carbon dinosaur that was half carbon and half diamond, and yeah, it was amazing, and it engaged them with the class. So this is the point where you can kind of get the temperature of the room with your opening, and also think about what you might do with some challenges that might come about. Of course, there's absolutely no way to foresee everything that happens in a classroom, especially with groups. Like there are always wild cards. So we have our plan and we have an idea. And the thing is, you need to be able to be flexible and kind of change it a little bit, tweak it last minute at this point. But when you're opening, you are creating a little barrier So the students were doing something else before, and the class is starting. So you need to create a barrier that allows you to see what is happening in the classroom and see what the day looks like, and allow them to sort of get a little break from what was happening before and get into the mood for class. And in this way, what comes next is quite important. Oh, well, this is what I was saying. So you kind of take the temperature. Sometimes the students are very lazy and they look super low energy. So what you need to do is kind of motivate them a little bit, do something a little bit more energetic to get them engaged, to get them to sort of like break from this lazy cycle. And sometimes they're super energetic and you need them to sort of calm down. So you can go and match their energy and then bring them down slowly, or have like a moment where you all guys like breathe or move or do something that will kind of like create that moment where it's like, okay, whatever was happening before, let's just come together for a moment and get ready for what we're doing right now. And the point of this is really to make students feel at ease with the learning process and to also give you a moment to feel at ease with what you are facing. So in your tables, I think you have like maybe 3, 4 steps. No, I think it was like 5 little steps here. Um, and they're basically like you have to set the rules, the ground rules for class. So it's rules of engagement. This bit, I think, is important at the beginning of your classes, and then you can do it as required, but you don't have to take up too much time in it unless it's really necessary. And then you create a little icebreaker activity. And this is what I was saying. I'm famously bad at making the icebreaker a 15% of my class kind of thing because I love chisme. I love it. And when my students open up and they give me a little something, a little chismecito, I am so happy. And I just let them do it. I let them explore it, especially if they're trying to do it in English, right? Because that will also give me an idea of what structures they're using, of what words they're using. And I think it's actually quite useful. And sometimes I can even connect it to class. I've become good at that because that way I feel like I'm not wasting all my time in chisme. And then we go into a warm up activity. And this warm up activity is kind of the hook. So if you make it a good enough hook, you can get the students to put some of their energy in the class instead of just like sit there and be like, oh, another class. So I feel like these are the 3 key moments of the opening. So again, depending on the group, it is a good idea to check back on agreements. Sometimes you have a group that has been behaving a little bit too rowdy, or they have been interrupting each other too much. So it is a good idea to sometimes check back and be like, okay, guys, remember today we're going to do a little conversation and we need to let everyone give their point of view and be patient, or whatever it is that you feel needs reinforcing. And of course, this is particularly important when you're going to make the students move around or play a little bit, because sometimes that can make them feel a little less watched, a little less contained, I guess. And they can kind of start to test limits. So it's a good idea to just be like, okay, we're gonna stand up, we're gonna move the tables around. So just remember uh, to, I don't know what it, be respectful of each other's things, mind your volume because we have a classroom next door, whatever it is. Okay. And at this point, you kind of introduce the day's goal in a very, very general way. So you're like, yeah, we're going to do this. But then you kind of cut that with a more, well, I think I use the Spanish acronym here, habilidades socioemocionales. I think in English it would be SES. But yeah, that's what you do. You go to an activity that you can center around them. You can make them feel like they can kind of express something about themselves at this point in the class a little bit more freely. So it's a good point to propose something a little bit creative, as long as it doesn't take up too much time, to make them have like a little laugh, maybe. I'm going to talk about this in more detail with some examples. And you can even integrate this part with the hook if it is appropriate for the topic you're covering, or create a little separate space for like the more SES centered activity and the more class centered activity. So again, a calming moment that will help kids raise their spirits and make them feel as much as at ease as possible to participate, because we know that it's always kind of difficult to participate. Oh, I this reminds me, there's something that I wanted to touch back on yesterday, and that I find is a great message to repeat in the classroom over and over. And it is that, well, this actually it's not mine. I completely stole it from a Japanese learning podcast. So when this Japanese podcaster ends his each of his chapters, he says that to learn Japanese, you need to make like 100,000 mistakes. He uses like this very big number, and he's like, go out and make mistakes. So this is a good point to remind kids that mistakes are really good in a learning process. So let's all make mistakes together so we can figure out the right way to do something, or the ways in which something doesn't work. So this sometimes helps some of the kids relax enough to make mistakes, to participate, even to make mistakes in a silly way that will make each other laugh. So that's a very useful thing, I think, to kind of get over some of the shyness that we might encounter in the classroom. And in at this point is where I always need to remind myself to be mindful of how much time you spend, because your whole class is still ahead. And depending on how ambitious you got, this could mean you still need to use most of your time ahead. So something that I like to do for this bit where we're trying to assess more like emotions and socializing, like these soft skills, is asking something very simple, like a check-in question. Like, what was the best thing about this weekend? What will the best thing about next weekend be? What are you looking forward to this week? What I don't know, whatever it is, like something. And then you can use like one of the tenses that you're reviewing, like what do you like best when you have a pizza? What's your favorite topping? And then you have a few students participate, right? Make it about their day-to-day life. Also answer it yourself so they can kind of react to whatever your answer is. Um, so I really like this, like best favorite thing about your week, or favorite thing about your day, and least favorite thing about your day, because it's always a good way to get them to express positive emotion and negative emotion. And sometimes also like, what is a recent accomplishment that you're proud of? What did you do today that made you happy, that made you proud, that made you whatever? This is also a moment where you could have students writing. So it's a fun way to start your class with like a very short, very lighthearted writing. And then you can get them to see how their writing improves over time if you repeat some of the same questions in different classes. And you can even have people exchange answers and report on someone else's response. So you can have them write and then give their answer to the classmate next to them, and then you have some of the classmates talk about what the other classmate wrote. Even you could do it like you could do it a little bit randomly, and then no one feels very exposed. So that's an interesting thing to do here, which will of course take up a little more time, but it becomes like a very short writing assessment that over time creates like a good log of how they improve. And if you're doing kind of the same questions over and over, that also helps them improve in this way. So you could have like kind of like a question hat that has the basics and then encourage them to add questions of their own. And then you create a little anticipation around this moment. So this is something that is also quite fun, because then and it works at every level, I tell you. So I had this wasn't exactly for, this was kind of like an exam thing. Like I would have kids relax in exams at university level by adding questions that didn't have anything to do with their exam. And they were so excited about them because I would give them extra credit also for them. But they were so excited about like which questions they got that I caught them talking about them in the hall after class. They were like, "What did you get? What did she ask you?" Because it was just silly questions about anything, and they really enjoyed that. So this is a great technique. And then you could also do things like scenarios. And scenarios are interesting because they kind of activate their creativity, and they also give you, in a less direct way, a read on how the class is feeling, how some students are feeling, and helps them express something about themselves. So you can make it about previous topics or use it as a vocabulary baseline for the class you're introducing. So make the question, the scenario, about something that you might also go back to in class. So questions like, if you could travel anywhere right now, where would you like to go? And then maybe have a vote and see how many people want to go to, say, France or China or whatever it is, right? Korea right now, right? Korea is super popular, so you would probably have a lot of K-pop fans there. And like, what could you eat every single day and never get tired of? What is the one food that you cannot eat? And you also make students more familiar with each other through very light, simple questions, and that is a relaxing way to start a class. Um, Also, this one, like, can you guess if the person next to you is more of a dog person or a cat person? Can you guess if the person next to you is older or younger than you? And then, like, this is a nice little break. So I love these. These you can find on Pinterest. I love to go to Pinterest for these guys. Or Instagram, they always have like this or that activity. So you could have a very short thing with this or that and ask different students, like, would you rather have invisibility or be able to fly? Would you rather ride a unicorn or fly on a dragon? Or have them vote, like raise their hands. Mm, something about their personality. And this also fosters like you could also, of course, adapt it to vocabulary that you are using or that you have used, and then find some of these, use them as a baseline, and modify whatever it is you need to modify, make them more relevant to their context. Okay, so I don't know if any of you here have tried or have considered trying these, and what concerns you or what you think it might go like. Do you feel it would be too distracting? Have you found it to be distracting if you've ever used techniques like these?
In my school,
Mhm.
I love to do this or that. And I think that is really funny. And also, when I take the attendance, I told them, like, here they just say, like, I'm here, right? But if I make a question for them, they
Mhm.
have to answer, and that is gonna be their attendance. So I think that that is like
Ah,
mixed two things that I have to do. That is to take the attendance and also to make the opening of the class.
oh, that's clever. I like that.
Yes, and also uh, I was like reading the questions that you show us, And sometimes like I know that the class is gonna be about grammar, and
Hmm.
I know they don't want to learn grammar, so I told them to, in a paper sheet, write a quote. Uh,
Oh,
I don't know, maybe a motivation quote, or maybe their dream, and all of them put them in a glass. So in the class, we make like, I don't know how to say, pausas activas.
oh yeah.
So,
Classes. Uh-huh.
so I start to read, like, I don't know, maybe two paper sheets, and then later another two paper sheets. So they also like chisme. So
Yeah.
they really want to know what the other classmates write.
Of course, we all like chismecito. We all enjoy it. It's social studies, really. It's not chisme.
Yeah, so I think this is a way like to get motivate to them.
Hmm. It gets them motivated and it gets them using grammar without them even realizing, right? Like whenever they're feeling like, oh no, I don't want to do this, maybe you can get them to do it without them noticing a little bit. And then you're like, well, you just used your grammar a little bit, hon. And they're like, what? So, yeah. Um, okay, I think there's something in the chat here. Yeah, so Sandra says, I have never taught English classes, but I have heard from other people's experiences that this fun ways helps a lot. Yes, I think so. I think it's always a good idea to get people to relax. And no matter what the class is, as I told you, like some of these techniques I learned from teaching science classes, and those are very serious, but then you can make them also realize that you can kind of relax around that too, and it's okay. And then it doesn't feel quite so serious, which I think, well, it works for me to learn without that pressure of it being like super like serious and formal. Leslie, please go on.
Another thing that is useful is to ask them about the previous class, because sometimes their previous class was not good. So they can express all the things that they have and lo sacan todo. So after that, they can like just like be relaxed and, yeah, just be in the class that is English now.
Yeah, that's a good break. And it's a good moment to be flexible. So you can, and also a reminder, está bien a veces cambiar a español, asegurarse de que todos están como en la misma página y justo para esto, así, si necesitan expresar sus sentimientos en español primero, luego decir, ok, how would we say that in English? Y como empezar a como hacer este easing into class. Yeah, and yeah, this has happened to me a lot too, that sometimes students are not paying attention because they're still kind of feeling their feelings about the class before something that happened. Sometimes it's very noticeable and sometimes it's quite subtle, and then you're halfway through the class and no one is there with you and you're like, wait, maybe I missed something. So it's always a good idea to give that space. Okay, moving on, because otherwise we're not going to get through this. Okay, so then we have the opening activity, and this is more of a hook. You want to get the students, curious. I'm not going to say excited, because honestly, they are taking a class, and that's not always up to them. So excited might be like, yeah, we want to shoot for the stars. That's fine. But we want to get them curious enough that they'll keep their attention long enough for them to get excited, maybe, or to get some learning out of it, ideally. So, you need to keep it short and sweet, but you also need to make it challenging, like, oh, yeah, okay, I know what this is. And you need to find a way to make it compelling. So I find that this is a great place to introduce a very short um, listening material because listening is difficult. And sometimes, if it is interesting enough, if it comes with an image that they are like, wait, what is happening? Or if it comes from something that kind of captures their attention, it will be a good challenge. Like, I want to understand. Um, I try to keep it as real as possible. Obviously, it's a good idea sometimes the conversation, uh, the audio that you're using. Oh, wait. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes, Marisa.
There was something there. Okay, yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, again, if you find listening material, I do try to keep it very realistic, which is challenging. It's very challenging for the students, but in any a little bit. But I don't try to make it way too simple unless it's really necessary because I do believe in learning from real material. I feel like my um, English, the quality of my English improved like crazy once I started getting into contact with real material. So don't underestimate, let's estimate our students so much to make it too slow because that is not compelling. That is not challenging. So it's very easy to lose their attention if you do it like that. At this point, maybe if you're doing like a listening exercise after a checkup, that that can be more of a book style exercise and it's fine. But here you want to be like, hey guys, come with me. Let's look at something in English. And they're like, it's difficult, but I want to be there with you. So some of the activities that I like to do here, and which can be kept quite short if you want to make them more active and more about like including them. They include like free listings, and free listings are super easy. You just introduce a category, and you're like, what are your top 5 favorite whatevers? What are your who are your five who are 5 people who you admire, or it could be anything. And they if
I think, do you hear Marisa? No.
Oh, there was like an interruption.
Okay. Let's wait for a minute.
and oh oh the recording had stopped. Oops. Oh well. This is another one where you kind of tell them a little story, have them fill out what is missing by spelling it. So it's in October, all the inhabitants of the Forest, blah, blah, blah. You can have some students read it out and then make sure that they're spelling correctly, or you can spell it out yourself and have them fill in their sheets of paper and then write the correct spellings on the blackboard, right? And also like icebreakers like this where you have for example, this one is also one of the topics that I think you guys are covering, like talking about likes and dislikes. A good way to do this before they actually write sentences could be this, like have the categories laid out, have them maybe draw it or write it with just one word, and then progress into them writing it down as actual sentences. Also, this one I really like to do. I'll so before I actually have like this final image, I'll have all the separate images and ask them where they think they should go. Like when I'm talking about what time, like 8 o'clock, which one would you use? So, and then I group them and then I make the corrections, right? And it's kind of a very fast intro to some topics. Like this could really just help you dive right in. Or you could have them draw something that also comes from their vocabulary. So if you have been talking about your neighborhood and stuff like that, you could have them draw real quick. Like there are 3 tall trees, a blue house, a fruit stand, a pet shop, and have them draw what is asked of them. So these are just some examples. I don't know if you guys have thought about some ways in which you could hook your students into like the topics that you want to introduce.
Mm, I remember that last semester I was teaching about tag questions.
Mhm.
So I want that they realize what a tag question is.
Mhm.
Uh, so I like make a video about some parts of the movie Shrek.
Mhm.
So I like organize some parts and I reproduce the video. So I told them to find all the questions in the video, and all
Mm.
the parts of the video that I choose were like tag questions. So through these, I remember that they were really excited, even though they are in high school and the movie were Shrek. But I think that that helps to yes, to identify what a tag question is, and also it was a hook.
I think that's a really good hook. And I think that cartoon movies are kind of timeless. I find that even adults get quite excited with them sometimes for something really silly. And again, as long as it is also kind of more realistic, they feel like they're not being that you're not being condescending to them. So if you find a very easy exercise from a book, sometimes that is kind of boring because it is not challenging. And it is also not something that they're familiar with. But if you're doing this and having them actually listen for questions in something that is really in English, that is challenging. And that is a little bit um, more interesting as a hook. And even if they don't get it all right, like the fact that they're getting bits of it is exciting. It is like, oh yeah, I can do this. So that's a great hook. Anyone else, have you thought about what hooks you might use? Yes, go ahead, Antonio.
I think the one with the songs
Mhm.
is a really interesting one. Uh, at that age, and I am talking about elementary school, uh,
Mhm.
we can see that the kids sing a lot of different kind of songs, even political songs, like
Yeah.
the last songs that were sounding in the TV in the last months.
Mhm.
So using that is naturally occurring in the environment, using songs of movies that they see or watch or that they listen to in the TV
Mhm.
is, well, I think it's a really interesting way to uh, begin to start to learn new vocabulary through these songs.
Yeah. I agree. And it also, because you have to really listen for the words, it is a good way to also improve their phonics, because they're not going to just start talking and pronouncing everything perfect. But when you hear it in a song, it's so much easier to remember the right pronunciation. It's so much easier to remember the word itself, because maybe you read the lyrics so many times that you know the spelling. I will always, for the rest of my life, remember all the lyrics to I Will Survive because of my seventh grade English teacher, because she had us fill in the, yeah. So it's also one of the oldies but goodies. Like, songs are amazing, and you can find examples of pretty much anything in English in songs. Some songs are very complex, they're poems. Some songs are super easy and they're just lists of things, or they repeat something over and over. So, or they have very good rhymes, so they get the students familiar with similar sounds. So songs are amazing for this kind of thing. Anything else? Anyone else? And I think, again, I kind of skipped over a little bit the fact that this is also a good point, and maybe that's why I chose this specific image for this slide. It's a good moment to try a little bit of movement-based learning, but in a moderate way, because you're still starting your class. So you want to, maybe if you feel like they need to relax, maybe use something that gets them moving a little bit, but make it very contained, so you can have them sort of sit back down a little bit in a different mood, like, oh yeah, we did something, and ready and more receptive to the explanation of what the class actually will be about. So yeah, that's, I think, everything for this bit. I don't know if, I think we're early, huh? Look at that. Against all odds. So so I don't know if anyone wants to discuss like their specific plans, what they're doing for their hook, maybe. I'm gonna stop sharing for now.
I have a question about the time,
Mhm.
because in my high school, the classes are only 50 minutes.
Mhm.
So in 50 minutes, I have to do everything.
Yeah.
So sometimes the previous teacher go out later. So yes, I lose some time, and then I go into the classroom and the students, they don't want to do anything. So I think that my real time of class is like 30 minutes.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah, in
that's very
and
short.
yes, and I have like 3 classes per week
Mhm.
with the same group.
Mhm.
And sometimes like the lessons, I don't know how to say cancelar, se cancelan,
Are canceled.
are canceled because in the high school they have another event. So
Oh.
I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, talk about a challenge, huh? Yeah. Well, that does sound tough. So I would say, on the one hand, prioritize, and that doesn't always mean content. If you're finding that the students are practicing more through the warm-up activities, I, as I said, I'm very bad at like putting an end to those. But if I see that they're being very productive and getting people engaged, I just let them go a little longer, because I feel like they're getting more out of this warm up activity than like a very strict a strict addition to my plan. So maybe I can make the explanation a little bit shorter. I can skip over a part where I thought we were going to sort of build to the ability together and just give a more specific example and move on from there. So um, 30 minutes is a very short time to accomplish a lot, but maybe you do need to plan for the fact that your classes are being an effective 30 minutes, and then maybe break your plan into into two very small bits, which, I mean, in a way also makes sense to students nowadays, because we are, well, society nowadays, we have become used to very short attention spans. So maybe we need to sort of adapt a little bit and make the most of what little time we have. Just make sure that they have enough to not to practice and practice again. And it's tough because I know that you guys have syllabi that you need to cover, but I guess then it becomes about prioritizing.
Thank you.
Mhm. Does anyone else have an experience that they'd like to share? Something about like their opening activity that they'd like to get some feedback on? It's awesome to get feedback from other people trying to do the same thing. Sometimes they're looking at it in a way you're not. Nope. We good? Oh, Sarai, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh,
I was thinking about this part of the class, that when you design this part, you have to describe your instructions, activity, and maybe this lesson plan is helps you to guide the class. But as Leslie said, sometimes there are some like situations that we cannot know previously, so we can, as a facilitator, we have to adapt according to the time. So don't worry about this. Just keep in mind that for this first exercise that Sandra, Antonio, and Uba is maybe the first class that they are designing. We are going to write step by step what is going to happen. Like try to imagine the class, and that's a good first step. I don't know. Here is I am going to Moni. Moni is I had the opportunity to watch Moni's class. So Moni, I don't know if you want to share something about your experience, because I know that it's your first year as a PEM, and I don't know if you have a good internet connection, but I want to notice that here, Moni is here. Join us. Or and maybe do you have your checklist? Sandra, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to be sure if I understood right. So, like we're taking this planification that we have, and we're supposed to plan an opening activity, like using the information that Marissa just shared with us, and we kind of like maybe not choose, but have to like based on that choose or decide like one activity that we would like to use as an apertura activity, right?
Right. like because
Okay.
Or make your own.
Yes.
Yeah, like make it your own. Maybe you have a different idea of what might go well with your group, with your like the specific settings that maybe you're imagining them right now, but it's a good idea to imagine a very specific setting. Like they are second year high school students. It's a school that has this and that. And the more specific you get, you realize that you have to sort of think about more specific things that you need in this opening. Maybe, for example, this is a great thing to think about. Like maybe they have a class before that they always leave angry because they have a teacher that they don't like. So how do you kind of like cut off from that and make them sort of relax and be ready for an English class that comes after? How do you kind of break them from a bad mood that they're having? Maybe it's a class that is right after lunch, and so everyone is kind of sleepy and everyone is kind of still rowdy from like having a break. So how do you get their attention then? Right? Like it's about imagining very specific scenarios because you could be hit with just about anything.
I think it's well, it's kind of a little bit pressuring because I've never done this, so I kind of like there's a lot of an infinite pool of possibilities, and also like the wonder if they will work or not. In my scenario, in my head, like in if everything was ideal, they're kids, so they're really happy with playing stuff, I think, and moving. But it's really stressful that I like really can't think of a question for you right now, and I'm really sure that they will pop up when I'm trying to plan this.
Feel
So
free to write an email or text me. I'll also leave my phone if you guys need it. Sure. Yeah, no, and it's trial and error because seriously, there are so many things that could happen in a classroom. So you can the plan is a good guideline, but you always need to be flexible. Because most kids are happy playing, but if I think about, for example, my own brother, he was the worst. I think if he had been my student as a student, if I had um, planned for an activity that involved movement or interacting, my brother would have been the wrench in the machine. He would have been the guy who was like, no, I don't want to talk to my classmates. Don't make me do this. So you also have sometimes guys who are super shy or are kind of like they don't like to play that much, and then you have to sort of adapt to not let that stop the activity or to just leave them be a little bit and understand that maybe that's not for every single student, because in a classroom you're going to have different kinds of students, and sometimes you're going to plan activities that will connect with some of them more than others, and you need to maybe then do a different activity that will allow that student to also show how they're learning, right? So we have a couple of, okay, we have a comment here from Monica, and I think that's really valuable because she also has some experience. So she says, according to your purposes of the lesson, you choose a hook that suits your plan. As you said, time is a factor when designing, wait, I can't see this whole thing. Why? When designing, why can't I? Ah. And you need to consider those ideas presented. And then we have another comment here from Uba. I think that if you have a short time, maybe you can apply one that refers to questions with a game like hot potato. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Like if you have those questions beforehand, it can be just like that very like fire away moment where it's like, you tell me this and now you tell me that, or the way Leslie does it and make it a way to take attendance and be like, go through everyone and ask them something really short. Yeah, Yes, exactly. We make mistakes to learn as teachers too. As I told you, we are all learners. We are all in a path of learning, and you continue to make mistakes, so you continue to learn. And as a teacher, you make a lot of mistakes before you get it right. And sometimes things that have gone right with one group don't necessarily go the same way with another group. So just don't get frustrated. I think it gets easier over time. And also do get frustrated. Sometimes it's fair. Sometimes you find yourself feeling frustrated, and that's also okay. It's part of it. It's a part of it. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're a bad teacher. It just means that you're learning. So I think at this point we can sort of cut off this part of this session with this and come back to the introducing new material session in a few minutes, okay? Unless anyone else wants to participate. No, we're good? Okay. Okay, so I'll see you all in a few minutes, and maybe Sandra, you can think of questions that you have or you might have. Like, let your imagination fly, and if you need to write them down and send them to me later, I'll be happy to look at them. Okay. Okay. Well,